Hello, everyone. Good Sunday morning, and welcome into another episode of the Lions Grid. I am Kevin Marheine, joined today by Mr. Jeffrey Raymond. Jeffrey, how are you doing on this Sunday?
I have a bit of a cold going on, so it feels I'm all stuffed up, congestion everywhere. So do apologize for the audience. if My voice is a little nasally on this Sunday morning, but other than that, doing good. Ready for some football. Leaves are starting to fall off of my tree, so we're really getting into the fall spirit.
Yeah, I know the weather is still, at least it's getting a little bit better. It's been in the high 80s or in the high 80s, mid 80s, whatever around here lately. So it's been holding on to summer as the best it can, but certainly we're starting to hopefully make that turn into the fall season. But we'll see how things go here.
Yeah.
It's always hard with Michigan. You got the false fall. You got
Oh
all
yeah.
four seasons in a single day. You never really know what's
Oh
going
yeah.
to
Oh
happen.
yeah.
So. And speaking of not knowing what's going to happen, Jeffrey, this Sunday is the Lions' first away game of the season, traveling across, well, not fully across, but the nation, but heading out there to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. And so, as we take a look here at this pivotal Week 3 matchup, Jeffrey, we take a look at the Lions, Cardinals, both teams currently sitting in second place in their divisions. Both teams 1-1 and looking for their second win on this young season. Um, Last week, of course, we know the Lions lost to Tampa Bay, and then the Cardinals were able to lay a smackdown upon the poor Rams, taking down their division opponents and looking very strong in that game. Jeffrey, as we head into this game, I think there is certainly some questions for the Lions, and certainly questions for the Cardinals too. Like, was last week what we can expect from the Cardinals, or was it just them taking advantage of a Rams team that is very much struggling with under the weight of all the injuries that they're having to deal with? And so, with that kind of in mind, Jeffrey, I think there's kind of two things that we're looking to see from the Lions side of things. The first is, can Jared Goff bounce back after having a rough game? But more importantly than just Jared Goff, the other item is, can we see more consistency out of this Lions offense? Last year the Lions offense was one of the best in the leagues. As we were talking about before the show, defenses so far have had the upper hand in this young season. But Jeffrey, what are your thoughts there about Jared Goff, about the Lions offense as a whole, as we head into this matchup against the Cardinals this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm looking at Jared Goff. I think he is the player to watch here in this game because we've got to have it. We have to have a good, clean game by him. Like we have to start kind of showing our offensive prowess that we're supposed to have, right? But our line has struggled early. Running game has been all right, but yeah, the line's been struggling early. Goff has struggled. Uh, Coaching mishaps. I'd like to not see that again this week. As much as I love Dan Campbell and everything, like you know, you can't be making those kind of mistakes and costing games. But yeah, I'm looking for hopefully a return to form here because the Cardinals do concern me a bit. I mean, because they did that to the Rams, but um, our game against the Rams was much closer, and and the Rams were also dealing with those injuries, and they were still able to keep close to us. But the Cardinals just kind of obliterated them. And honestly, as far as like looking into just these two games of the season, the Cardinals have looked a little bit more impressive than the Lions. For to be honest with you, I know the Lions have had big expectations, so that kind of biases like what we're supposed to be looking for. But the Cardinals are looking strong. They've got a stud wide receiver. Kyler Murray's starting to come back to form. I think they could cause us some trouble here.
Well, I definitely think you're not the only person to think so. As I was putting together our roaring or boring segment for this episode, there was a lot of bold predictions coming out that the Cardinals would upset the Lions in this matchup today. Saw that across multiple different publications. So, it's definitely out there that the Lions may struggle here against the Cardinals. And, the big part of that is the offensive consistency. Jeffrey, as you pointed out, I think we've seen good moments with the passing game. I think we've seen some good moments with the running game, especially in overtime against the Rams where they sort of took the ball and they just ran the ball down their throat and scored the touchdown. The running game looked really good at that point, but we haven't seen it in these two early games in the season consistently, from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. We have yet to see the Lions play a full game that full level of consistency, and just that's kind of what I'm hoping to see here. But at the same time, I recognize that it's only been 7 days since we played Tampa Bay. So in those 7 days, have they been able to do enough to sort of figure out these issues that have been plaguing them on this young season? Is there going to be enough time for us to really see this offense turn around? Or is it going to be a game where we're going to need to where we can see some improvements, but we're still not going to get fully back to where they were towards the end of the year? I mean, logically, sort of, being conservative, that's probably the more likely answer. We'll probably see some improvements, but we shouldn't necessarily expect them to be back in the same form they were as they were making their playoff run. But certainly, with the expectations, as you pointed out, that we have for this Lions team, and the fact that this is their third season together with this offense and a lot of the key players, that we kind of expected them to look more like the team last year than they have so far. So, uh, you know, definitely worrisome, as you said, some concern there. Uh, not too hard on the panic meter yet. I'm not, I don't think the ship's going down, but certainly, want to see them rebound here. And as Edward points out here, if they can get back to basics and get that ground game going, that's really where Jared Goff can flourish. Um, we'll have to see how the defense does here too, as that's a concern for Ed. But if they can do a bend not break approach, and which is what they have sort of done so far this season, they have let up yards, but they have held both teams to 20 points. So if we can again hold the Cardinals to 20 points, and this offense can get shake off some of the rust, I definitely would expect the Lions to be in this game at the end of the game. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts there about what we can expect from the Lions defense against this Cardinals offense?
I think the Lions defense, we have been a little bit of a bend not break, but we definitely have a pass rush going, especially Aiden Hutchinson. He's just
Mhm.
being a monster out there. But the talent's going to shine on the defense. But the thing is, if the defense is out there for a long time because our offense is not controlling the clock, we're not, getting these third downs, we're not, extending drives for them. Kyler Murray is a difficult quarterback to contain. He's our most more mobile quarterback that we've faced. And last time we faced a pretty highly mobile quarterback last year, I'm thinking back to the Ravens when Lamar
Mm.
Jackson absolutely just detonated on us on the ground and through the air. So, if you don't give the defense enough time to kind of settle in, and we can just kind of keep them rested, get them out there for series where they could be juiced up. We can contain these offenses and make it so Kyler Murray's not running up the score on us. Because if we get into a shootout territory, all bets are off here.
Yeah, and you've already touched on a number of the players to watch in this game too, Jeffrey. I mean, Jared Goff, of course, a big one. Aiden Hutchinson, the current NFL sack leader, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Kyler Murray, what he can do for the Cardinals, and then you alluded to Marvin Harrison Jr. being their receiver, who went. It was impressive how he went from being a bust through the first four quarters of the season to here comes the fifth quarter of the season, and all of a sudden he's back to looking like a first round pick. So.
Man,
It,
the sports media sometimes they just kind of just take one thing and just ride with it for days and days, and we only had like a week of time to see a literal rookie going out there and labeling him a bust after the first week. Come on, man.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's an important thing too to remember here is that this is week 3, right? Like there is still a long season ahead of us. Certainly is a game that the Lions need to win, but it's hard to have a must-win game in week 3 of the NFL season unless you're one of like the 0-2 teams that currently exist in the NFL. Like if you um, they need to those teams need to get a win to start building some momentum there. But otherwise, there's still a long season ahead of you. Like I said, there's a lot I want to see out of this Lions team and things like that. But I don't necessarily think this is a must win for them. But again, especially because you look at the NFC West as a division, you have the Seahawks, you have the 49ers. Unfortunately, I think the injuries are going to stop the Rams from being effective this season. But then you also have, the 49ers who are waiting on Christian McCaffrey coming back. And then, we assume that they'll be able to make a push towards the end of the season. That's a very competitive division there in the NFC West. So just because we lose a game to one of them, if we can do the things we need to through the rest of the season and secure the NFC North and get our playoff bid through being the division champs, then we it's not going to be, there's losing a game to the Cardinals isn't going to impact that too much. If we're one of the teams at the end of the season trying to get in with the playoffs or to the playoffs with a wild card push, then yeah, this game down the road may have more repercussions than we would have thought in week 3, but that's one of those things where the only way we're going to know is if we get to that point. And again, if we fail to win the NFC North, which I'm not sure about you, Jeffrey, but I think, I do know. I think we both picked the Lions to win the NFC North here and get their first back-to-back NFC North championships. So, ultimately, if they do drop this game, I don't think it necessarily will stop that from happening. But definitely, again, a game where we want to see improvement on the offense and certainly want to see the defense continue to perform. And then 2 other players we haven't touched on, Jeffrey, that I think are players to watch in this game. Jamison Williams currently is still on the top 5 list at the moment for receiving yards. We have to see if he can continue his strong performance that he's had through 2 weeks here. He did drop off a little bit last week against Tampa Bay, but certainly has been living up to expectations so far in this early part of the season. And then a guy that you're not going to hear a whole lot of, hear a lot about outside of here is Dennis Gardeck. He is a linebacker for the Cardinals. He is currently their sack leader. He has 3 sacks himself, so 2.5 less than Aiden Hutchinson. And then he also has a forced fumble. So he's a guy that we're going to have to watch out for when it comes to the pass rush for the Cardinals, as a guy who may be able to make a difference for them. And again, not necessarily a guy who is, when you think about pass rushers across the NFL, Dennis Gardeck isn't a guy that I hear mentioned a whole lot, but a guy that so far through 2 weeks is having, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble. It's not a bad start to your 2024 campaign.
Oh, absolutely not. Especially because the Cardinals are retooling. They had some good draft capital. This is post Cliff Kingsbury, kind of like all of that kind of cleaning house. Mm-hmm. And they looked pretty spicy even last year when Kyler Murray was just kind of getting back into it. Like they played pretty well, and I think they're arrowing up. So I wouldn't be surprised if their young talent is starting to shine here.
Absolutely. And let's go into our keys to victory here, Jeffrey. And Ed just had a comment here that we'll talk about. Hutch will see a lot more double teams this week. Who will step up? Well, our first key to victory here, Jeffrey, is being able to dominate the line of scrimmage. And of course, that goes for both the offense and the defense. But if we start with the defense for the Lions here, obviously we know Aiden Hutchinson, 5.5 sacks, leading the NFL currently, has been off to a blistering start to the season. Looking really good. But DJ Reader, of course, this will be his second game back. So, we should see him continue to shake some of that rust off as he's coming off his injury and the surgery to repair it. And then Marcus Davenport with his groin injury is a go for this week too. And so things are looking good with our defensive line. And then if you take a look at the offensive line for the Cardinals, their starting right tackle is going to be missing this game. And he is actually a backup to their actual starter who early on before the season started was placed on IR. So they were already, going with their backup option. So I believe getting the start at right tackle across from Aiden Hutchinson should be a guy who was just elevated off their practice squad.
Oh,
so
man.
When he's been feasting already. He's getting an opportunity here against a guy who is not their second option, but their third option. So I think
welcome to the 53-man roster. Your assignment this week is Aiden Hutchinson.
That's a tough task. So I imagine Ed's right. They're probably going to try and do some things to get him some help, because taking a guy from the practice squad and throwing him to the Wolves like that would just be, that's cruel and unusual punishment. So
right. We were violating the 8th Amendment out there.
Hopefully the coaches try and do something to help him, but certainly if they do that, that should free up things for McNeil, for Reader, for Davenport, for the guys that we have in the depth position. Like, this should be something where this defensive line, if Hutchinson can't do it himself, hopefully we see the rest of the defensive line feast, because that Cardinals offensive front is a little shaken up there. And Jeffrey, as you mentioned when we were talking about the Lions offensive line, and some of the struggles they've had, one weak link in the chain can be sort of a detriment to the entire unit. So uh, hopefully the Lions will be able to exploit that this afternoon against the Cardinals.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the back end of the defense too, I'm going to be really interested, and I'm pretty excited to see this matchup because I'm pretty sure they're going to put Terry and Arnold right on Marvin Harrison Jr. So we get to see rookie v rookie. I'm assuming that we're going to see the rookie v rookie matchup there, and we'll see if these quarterbacks can hold on, because if they can hold on just a bit, Aiden Hutchinson might be able to get in there.
Absolutely. Any extra time they can give him to get home
Mhm.
should be good. And as Ed points out there, the Arizona offensive line may be looking to get a quick first step, which may lead to some false starts as they try and find a way to deal with that. Because that's going to be could be a big problem for the Cardinals, but we'll have to see. But of course, one of the things that does help them out, even if the offensive line uh, does struggle against Aiden Hutchinson, Jeffrey, you touched on it earlier, is the mobility that Kyler Murray brings to the table. He's definitely, he's not going to be back there turning up all the time and being just trying to not move. I think the other key to victory here is for the Lions is going to be able to limit that mobility to stop him from being able to make big plays with his feet. And when they do have an opportunity to get big plays for losses, to be able to get him down in the backfield. But what are your thoughts there? I know the Lions, as you mentioned, have struggled at times against mobile quarterbacks. So how do you think they'll fare this Sunday against Kyler Murray?
I think this is the big key matchup, because even during this kind of era of Dan Campbell, we have struggled against mobile quarterbacks, even especially like quarterbacks who have some speed. Not, you wouldn't necessarily call them like like track stars out there, but
Hmm.
like I can distinctly remember times. One, Lamar Jackson ran all over us last year.
Hmm.
Two, when we were playing San Francisco in the NFC Championship game,
Brock
Brock
Purdy.
Purdy just was jackknifing us, like, with these 5, 10, 15-yard gains, because we were so, focused on everything else. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
it's just, it's tough. And even this past week, Baker Mayfield running the ball through us there, kind of thing. So that scares me a little bit. And I think that's the matchup for me personally. Like, can we um, turn these pressures? Because that's another staple of this Dan Campbell era defense is we get a lot of pressures. We don't get home a lot with those sacks. And with Kyler Murray being this mobile, for me, that's a huge exploitable matchup that they can take advantage of.
Yeah, and even Justin Fields was another guy that the Lions struggled against with his ability to run the ball. Now, thankfully, in his case, he would then have a turnover, and that would sort of it was like
Yeah,
good.
we
He
started
was
throwing the
able,
ball. Things didn't
yeah.
work out so well.
So it was like, okay, yeah, he'd make a play, and then he would go ahead and make a mistake, and then we'd be able to take advantage. But with Kyler Murray, he's definitely not as prone to being to make those mistakes. So definitely a concern, and we'll have to see that goes. And speaking of turnovers, Jeffrey, we've talked about it the first 2 weeks, so maybe we're putting a jinx on it or curse, whatever you want to do to call it. I don't know, but traditionally, Jared Goff has been very good at taking care of the football. He hasn't been someone who, through his first couple of years here with Detroit, has been a liability in that regard. So I think another key to victory here is winning that turnover battle, which means Jared Goff and the offense taking care of the ball, and then that defense doing what they can to get takeaways. So, it has been a little bit of a struggle. Jared Goff has thrown a couple interceptions here to start the season. And really, I mean, taking a look at the box score from last week with Tampa Bay, one of the big differences were those two interceptions that he had. And it wasn't necessarily that like they were pick sixes or anything like that, and they necessarily like directly impacted the outcome of the game. I think their biggest impact was just on momentum, right? Like they stopped the Lions from being able the Lions were moving the ball. They were starting to like get the ball down into position to score, and then they'd have the turnover, and it would just sort of kill the drive and give the ball right back. And whatever momentum they were able to start building, it just gave it right back to Tampa Bay. So I think the big thing with the Lions is to limit those turnovers and then to really generate some takeaways themselves. So
I you
pretty
know
pretty
I
simple one, but
actually I disagree. I think those
oh,
turnovers were huge, actually. So I because he's thrown three interceptions so far. right?
Mhm.
Two in that first game, or sorry, one in that first game, two in that second game, and
Yep.
both of them were within one score games, and that's three times that we have lost possession of the football. And in one score games, those are huge. So I think the
Mhm.
turnover battle, I actually cost us these games here.
That's fair. That's fair. That's a great point. I do know. So the only I think it wouldn't have been as bad. Like, we know that the Lions went 1-7 last week in the red zone. Had they gone, 3 of 7, and because neither of the interceptions happened in the red zone. So had they been a little bit more effective in the red zone when they got the ball down there, I think it could have canceled it out. But you're definitely right. It is just another example of that the inconsistency with the offense too, right? Like you're moving the ball at times really well, you're doing a lot of things right, and then you just have whether it be the hiccups when you get to the red zone or it be those turnovers where there were just so many times where they were starting to build momentum and they it just killed themselves. Like
Yeah,
whether it was self-inflicted wounds, whether it be again a turnover, which is that quick change, or that just not being able to finish and get into the end zone. There's just a lot going on there where
yeah.
they were doing so well at times in that game. They just weren't able to really capitalize on things.
Yeah,
And
and I'm a
so
Jared Goff stan too. Like
yeah,
I love the guy. I love our coaching staff and our coaching staff as well. But cleaning up these kind of mistakes kind of was going to set us apart from the great teams and the good teams. So looking to see kind of more great team kind of action going on here.
yeah. Last season we were amongst the best red zone offenses. We were over 60% uh, positive success rate inside of the red zone. And so far through 2 weeks in this NFL season, we're in 28th with like 27%. So we are definitely struggling at the moment, and that was one of the hallmarks of this offense last season was being a team that could finish and get those points, and we were one of the best in the league at doing it. So we'll talk about that in a moment here too when we get to roaring and boring. We'll see what your thoughts are if they've been able to turn that around. But Jeffrey, I think a big part of being able to finish is our last key for victory here, which is just maintaining focus and discipline, right? Know, sort of mentioned the fact that the Lions have been inconsistent so far throughout the games. There's been moments where they've looked really good. There's been moments where they looked rather mediocre. And so I think just being able to put forward that consistent effort from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, if we could see that out of the Lions, I would certainly feel really good. And to your point earlier, too, with the coaching staff, one time can be a fluke, two times worrisome. I definitely don't want to see a third game here with some questionable coaching decisions, especially at the end of the first half. Because that's at 3 games, we're at a trend at that point, and it's definitely something that I hope they can get cleaned up. So it's not only the players that need to maintain, their focus and their discipline. It extends to the coaching staff too. So hopefully here against the Cardinals, we'll see a different, more locked in team here, and they're playing in the late afternoon window. It's a 4:25 start because the Cardinals are on. I think the Cardinals are technically on Mountain Time, but it's close enough to Pacific Time that they get that late start. All right, Jeffrey. Well, we're going to head now into our roaring or boring section. And here we go, Jeffrey. So, you find this particular item roaring or boring? Aiden Hutchinson. We've talked about him quite a bit this episode, being the current NFL sack leader. Do you think that he will have 3+ sacks
Oh,
today and maintain his sack lead?
the over under on 3 sacks.
Three
I
plus.
3 plus. I'm gonna take the under due to kind of the maneuverability, escapability of Kyler Murray. Right, like there are gonna be some times where he's just gonna slip out of our grasps just because he's that good.
Mhm.
So I say, I for as 3 plus, I don't think it'll be 3 plus. I could see him getting 3, but I think that's kind of where it ends. I think we're gonna have trouble containing him today.
All right, and I would say I think this. So it was impressive what he did against Matt Stafford just because of how fast Matt Stafford throws the ball. Obviously, he got most of his sacks last week um, against Baker Mayfield, who I think if he's able to get 3+ sacks here against Kyler Murray, it definitely is a little bit more impressive again because of that mobility. and I think it certainly is a signal that people should be having him on their Defensive Player of the Year ballot. I'm gonna go with roaring in this one. I think it is something
Oh,
that
okay.
it's tantalating, and I'll take it. I'm gonna come out here. I'll drink the Kool-Aid.
All
Of
right.
all the players that I think you can drink the Kool-Aid for on this Lion team, I think Aiden Hutchinson right now is the guy playing at the level that warrants it. Right? Like I
He's
think
got the
he's the guy.
sweetest Kool-Aid, I'd say.
Yeah,
He's got the sweetest Kool-Aid currently.
I think he's got Kool-Aid that is worth savoring at the moment. Next up here, Jeffrey, JMO will have his second 100-yard receiving game of the season. You think it
Oh,
happens here against the Cardinals?
oh, I'm gonna roar on this one because I have been kind of hard on the Lions today, and I do. Maybe this might be some wishful thinking or some educated wishing going on, but we're gonna need a big game by the offense today to win. I think a clean game, obviously an efficient day, a box score that looks just like last game, except we get the win, kind of thing. But yeah, I think. I think he's going to keep it rolling and remain in that top 5 or 6 kind of area as far as yards.
And I agree. I'm going to roar on this one as well. I think he can. So far, he's looked good. He's lived up to the promise that he's had. Now we haven't seen him lead the league in touchdowns because he said he wanted to lead in receiving yards and touchdowns. So he's got some work to do there. Which if he can find the end zone a couple times this week, I'm not going to complain. But I definitely think his with how fast he is, them definitely working him into the offensive game plan. I think he can do another 100 yards. He is averaging currently 100 yards per game, but he only had 79 last week against Tampa Bay. So that's more so a combination of the two games across. But I think he can get another 100-yarder here.
But Buda Baker's having almost like a little renaissance here. He's been flying around, so we'll see.
You got to watch out for Buda Baker.
Yeah.
He is a guy to take note of on that defense. Now, Jeffrey, this next one I've been in the Lions Kool-Aid so far for the first two, but this one I'm going to spoil it. I'm not necessarily. I'm going to wait till they show me it, but the offense will improve this week, having a red zone percentage over 50%.
I'm buying
Boring
this
or
one.
boring?
That doesn't indicate that I think they're going to win necessarily, but I'm definitely buying this one. I think we have a bunch of red zone opportunities, and I think we take care of business on that front.
Yeah, so like I said, I spoiled it a little bit. I don't know if they're going to get over 50%. I am expecting them to improve from where they've been, but I don't know if that's going to equate to being over 50%, right? Because last year, thinking about it, they were one of the best offenses with a 60% red zone rate. So, it's only been a week. So maybe they get up into like the 40% or something like that. But I don't necessarily know until they come out and prove it that they can get closer to where they were last year. But we'll see how it goes. And then one here about their ability to hold Marvin Harrison Jr. to less than 100 yards receiving. Do you think they can do that in this game, Jeff?
I'm roaring on. I got to roar on this one, mainly because I'm really excited about the matchup here between him and Arnold. But I think Arnold gets the upper hand. I think we have to scheme for this guy. I think he's been just we're going to try to blank him. You know what I mean? Like make other people win on that offense. So yeah, I think he gets less than 100.
No, not you think Terrion Arnold is going to come out here and have his flu game equivalent? I mean, he has been struggling with that illness all week, but he's good to go. So he comes out.
I want some flu game action. Get well soon. But I want some flu game action.
Hey, I'm there with you, and you know what? I'll just sip the Kool-Aid with you, and I'll roar on this one as well. I think that between Terrion Arnold, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, I feel like they can get it done. And of course, I already roared on Aiden Hutchinson being a terror in the backfield. So if he's given Kyler Murray all he can handle back there, should make it easier on Terrion Arnold and the secondary to keep tabs on Harrison Jr. So, all right, those are all the Lions and Cardinal focus ones I have for you, Jeffrey. The last two here, and these ones are a little bit more open-ended, so you don't really have to say roaring or boring to them. But of the 2-0 teams, Jeffrey, the undefeated teams currently in the NFL, which one do you think is going to be the last remaining undefeated team this season? So your options are Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Houston, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Vikings, Saints, Tampa Bay, and Seattle. Who do you like out of that list to be the last remaining undefeated team on the
Last
season?
remaining. Oh man, am I
And two of them are, as we'll take a look here with your lock of the week. Houston and Minnesota are playing against each other.
Yeah, I think it's hard in this list. It's almost like Kansas City versus the field a little bit is kind of where I'm kind of leaning at. I think they take care of business typically pretty well, and obviously they are the team to beat. So I think Kansas City will end up being the last undefeated here, and some of this goes down for these other teams pretty soon. I'd
You
say.
and you and Ed both roaring for Kansas City. I like it.
All
I'm going to
right.
play
All
the
right, Ed.
I'm gonna go on an edge, and I'm gonna say it's gonna be Buffalo. Is gonna be
Okay.
the last undefeated team, just because that seems like a Buffalo thing to do. Be like the last undefeated team, and then go into the playoffs and lose. So
Oh,
that seems like
dang, man.
it just
Brutal.
it feels like a Josh Allen Buffalo Bills sort of just script. It just kind of happens every year. On the flip side of that coin, Jeffrey, there are a few 0-2 teams, 9 of them. Which of the 0-2 teams will be the last winless team on the season? For your sampling pleasure, you have the Los Angeles Rams, you have the Carolina Panthers, the New York Giants, the Denver Broncos, the Indianapolis Colts, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Tennessee Titans, and then, of course, the two possibly most surprising teams on this list, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I really want to say Denver because I'm a professional Sean Payton hater, but I think it's going to be the Giants is going to be the last winless team. I think Carolina is going to get a bump with the red rifle locked and loaded and back here in 2024, taking the reins. I think they're gonna turn that into a couple wins at least here early. But yeah, I'm thinking the Giants. They look lost. There's reports out there of Brian Dable possibly losing locker rooms. It's they're toast up there in New Jersey.
Yeah, there. When you look at this list, there are a number of teams that I think could fit the bill. The two teams that I definitely feel the most confident about them actually getting wins are Cincinnati and Baltimore, and we'll talk about that Baltimore one here in a moment. But I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Tennessee. I don't. I think Will Levis
Oh, no.
has actively been conspiring to lose games. He's found ways to just hurt Brian Callahan and just give games away. So
Oh man, he
uh,
got Ryan Callahan threw him under the bus. I mean, rightfully so because he cost them games, but he let him have it in the
yeah,
media.
yeah, the Titans. I don't think they're a bad team either. Like they have talent on their roster, but they just for whatever reason just don't seem very interested in winning games at the moment. Uh, of note here is the fact that there are 3 NFC South teams currently on that 0-2 list with the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Titans. Certainly struggling, although there are 2 AFC North teams on there too. But I think most people think that that's going to change here shortly. And so, we'll see how that goes. But I think we sort of alluded to it that some of the matchups here are in our locks of the week, Jeffrey. So I'll turn it over to you here to talk about your pick for the Minnesota Houston game.
Yeah, my lock of the week is going to be Minnesota over Houston. I think it's I'm kind of arrows up on Minnesota right now. Damn, Sam Darnold's playing pretty great. I think Houston's been in some close matchups here, but I think their kind of luck is going to run out here. It's in Minnesota, and it's about it's a 1.5 point spread. I think Minnesota wins in a close one, but they're a team starting to scare me in our division here. So
yeah, I know that when they say a home team is favored by less than 3 points, that it's kind of a toss up at that point. So definitely a close game there if you're looking just on the betting odds. And it'll be interesting to see. This is, I think, a good test that Houston offense against the Minnesota defense. So far, as you said, that Minnesota defense has looked really good through the first 2 weeks. So I want to know how concerned we need to be as Lions fans about that defense. And so I'll keep an eye on that game too. I think that should be a good game. And I know there's some different NFL writers that are predicting that to be one of the spiciest games on this young season. So we'll have to see how it goes there. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts here? I know we talked about it a little bit before the show. I saw one of the bold predictions here for week 3 being the fact that both Sam Darnold and CJ Stroud would throw for over 300 yards in that game. And we've also talked about how defenses have sort of been dominating offenses early on. So do you think it's possible that we'd see 2 QBs throw for 300 yards in the same game?
Oh, man. I don't think it happens here because I think this is going to be a little bit more of a defensive battle. I think I'd say a prediction would be that I think Stephon Diggs gets contained here, and it's CJ Stroud's going to have to rely on Nico Collins and Tank Dell a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's going to be way more defensive. I think we're going to see defenses still kind of having the edge here in week 3.
Yeah, I definitely would feel more confident if you had like Hawkinson and if Addison was at full health. And I know even Jefferson got a little beat up in last week's game too. So like if the Vikings were coming in there with everyone fully healthy, I could definitely see both offenses being more likely to hit that mark. But it's, we really haven't seen a whole lot of 300-yard games out of quarterbacks this young season. So yeah, it'll be interesting there. Be interesting. Another game, my lock of the week that I think will be of interest for everyone as well. Another game where the home team is actually the underdog. They're actually getting +1 in this game. Baltimore heading down to Jerry World to take on them Cowboys. And I'm going with Baltimore in this one. They're 0-2 heading in here. Of course, Dallas took care of business against Cleveland in week 1, and then they lost last week big time to the Saints, and that was at home in Jerry World. So it was that classic roller coaster for Cowboys fans where, hey, we're going to win the Super Bowl. Hey, we suck again. And with Baltimore, of course, they 0-2 really want to start turning this thing around so that they can make, have a better chance. History, as we know, history isn't usually kind to teams that start 0-2. So if they are going to start that push, they need to start doing it sooner rather than later. But really, I think Lamar Jackson has been doing almost everything he can to help get these Baltimore Ravens wins. And I think this is the game where he finally says enough. And I think he puts in an MVP performance against these Cowboys, and they go down to Jerry World and they get a victory here to get on the board. So
I would love to
Baltimore,
see that.
my lock of the week to get the win over the Cowboys.
I'd love to see that, especially at the Cowboys. Also, professional Dallas hater. Like to see them lose, and yeah, I hope you're right, man.
It just
Another
seems
nation at home would be fantastic.
like of all the places to happen, it always feels like that is the place. Now I know they've given Dak his extension, but I don't believe Mike McCarthy has gotten signed on or extended. So
job right now.
Yeah. So if he drops 2 back-to-back home games, now this one may be a little bit closer. I'm not expecting them to come in and rout them like the Saints did. That was, I didn't see that coming. I don't know where Alvin Kamara is playing like he's found a time machine and went back to a couple of years ago, and Derek Carr has been playing amazing with the new offensive coordinator. So yeah, hopefully, but still surprising. But I think Baltimore can get the job done here against the Cowboys and get that coveted first win of the season. And of course, here through our we didn't do a lock of the week or the first week. We just started the segment last week in week 2, Jeffrey. So we're currently both sitting at 1-0 with our picks. So we'll have to see what happens here. You with your Minnesota pick over Houston, and me with Baltimore over Dallas. Have to see how things shake out. But now to end the episode, Jeffrey, one last thing for us to do here, and that is to make our choice. Are you taking the Lions on the road in their first road test of this young season, or are you going to go with the Cardinals at home to take down Detroit?
I think that we go in there, we put up a good fight, but at the end of the day, we can't stop Kyler Murray. I'm deviating for the first time ever,
Ooh.
ever on the history of my time on the show. I'm going to pick the not Lions team. I'm picking the Cardinals. I think they're going to win. People are going to start freaking out. I don't think we're going to do bad overall in the season, but I see us dropping another game here. First road game. First a chance to look at the mobile quarterback versus this defense. Yeah, I think Arizona's going to pull it off in the end.
I'm going with the Lions in this one. Certainly, as we've been talking about things, there's definitely a lot to be concerned about, and I don't know how much the Lions will have improved since we last saw them against Tampa Bay. But I still expect this team to come out here and handle business. I like what we've seen out of Aiden Hutchinson. I think we've seen some good things out of this offense. I definitely think it could be a very close game between these two teams. And it either could be as Ed points out, it could either be a touchdown victory, or I could even see, a last minute kick from Jake Bates to take the lead and, bring home the bacon. But I like the Lions in this one. I think what the Cardinals did last week to the Rams was impressive, but I think they are going to be a challenging team, but I hope that the Lions can do enough to sort of outlast them and get out of here, get out of the desert with a victory. But that just may be me sipping the Kool-Aid a little too hard, because there definitely are concerns, and certainly I think
that feels weird to pick against them. Just like gives me the heebie-jeebies, but I don't know, man. Strategically, though, I gotta hedge my bet at some point, especially when I want to win the pick'em for the year.
Yep. Right now we're both sitting at 1-1, so if we always pick the Lions, our records will be identical for them. But yeah, it is what it is. But we'll see. We'll see. I like to think that the Lions can get things done, but again, it is their first road trip. Like, on top of all the struggles they've had, it's their first road trip of the season. It's their first, so they're playing at the 425 window spot. I mean, they have been kind of all over the place so far, because they played Sunday night football to start the season. Then they played in the 1:00 window last week, and now they're playing 425. So they've been kind of all over the place. So far, they've hit every Sunday slot they can this young season. So
it's also going to be our first look at the new away uniforms, the all white combo. So white pants, white jerseys, white socks. So see how that looks out there in the wild.
With maybe look good, feel good, play good might be the case there. That new drip might power them to victory, because I know last year their choice in gear did make a difference when they went full colored at home. They did not drop a game. They were undefeated. So when this Lions team is feeling what they got on, they certainly play better. So maybe these all whites, we're going to find out. It's either going to be something where they need to wear them all the time, or they just need to burn them and get rid of them and never wear them again.
Hopefully not, if they look awesome. We don't have to burn them. I wonder when we'll get to see the new black uniforms, their take on it this year. That was a Dan Campbell request that we bring back the black ones. He's a big fan of them. I'm curious when we get to see those out in the game during the game.
Yeah, and the new helmet with that's got the black line on that blue. Yeah, those will look. Those, I think they call them their Motor City, or maybe that was last year's one. But definitely, I'd love to see. Part of me thought we would see that against the Rams, since it was a Sunday night game, but not yet. So anxiously waiting on that debut, because you're right. I think those are pretty sick uniforms. Well, we want to thank everybody who's tuned in today, and thank you, Ed. We appreciate all the love you've been showing us this morning, and we're happy you're enjoying the segments we have here. Of course, this is our pregame show that we do on Sundays at 11 o'clock. You can join us on Tuesdays for our reaction episodes. Those happen at 6:30 p.m., and then we do a number of different segments there, including our King of the North, our Grind the Grid, of course, and then taking a look back at the outcome of the game. So we'll be talking about this Detroit Lions Arizona Cardinals game on Tuesday, and we're coming to you live on a number of different platforms. Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube are the channels where you can find us live. You can also find this podcast on Spotify, you can find a replay of this as well. And then we're also on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok with reels and all that good stuff. So however you enjoy to, or however you prefer to watch your Lions Grid content, there's a channel out there for you, and we appreciate all the support. Jeffrey, I know you went with the Cardinals in this game, hedging your bets a little bit here, but there's a way we like to end the episodes here, especially on the pregame ones, and that's with a Go Lions. So
All right.
I
Yeah.
know,
Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Go
I know
Lions.
you're going with the Cardinals, but we gotta go Lions here to end the day.
All right.
All right, everyone. Thanks again, and we will catch you during the next episode. Have a good rest of your Sunday, and go Lions.
Go Lions.
Bye-bye.